Lou. Could you please introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure, I'm Lou Kerner. I've been crypto 24/7 since June 29th, 2017. My day job is I'm a partner at Blockchain Co-Investors. We're a crypto fund to fund, investing out of our third fund. We're invested in 43 of the leading crypto VCs around the world. But my passion is really community. I started CryptoMondays on January 8th, 2018, and we now have 60 active chapters around the world. It's just a meetup, and we're decentralized. And in July of 22, I started the Crypto Oracle Collective. We're a decentralized Web3 advisory service. We started with 24 Web3 experts. We now have over 250. We have a growing roster of clients, a trading token on Base, and next month we launch our AI Web3 accelerator.
Amazing. You've had a lot of impact, and it seems to have started again on June 29th, 2017. What happened that day that made you, well, first of all, you remember it and you mention it in your blogs. What happened that day?
Sure. So, I had gone down the rabbit hole 13, 14. I joked deep enough that the Wall Street Journal had written a story on Bitcoin in 2013, quoted me as Wall Street's Bitcoin expert. But while I was looking at it, I did not see it. And on June 29th, 2017, ICOs were going crazy, and I didn't quite understand what was going on. And I held a conference call with four ICO experts, including the founders of Bancor, who had just had the largest ICO in history, the founders of Tezos, who the following week had an even bigger ICO, and a VC, Olaf Carlson Wee. And Olaf said something on the conference call. And I now realize that there's a word for what happened to me. It's called the Gestalt shift, where one moment you see the world as one thing, you get a new piece of information, and the world is something totally different. And, I describe it as seeing the crypto light. And what I saw was, for the first time in history, we had a tool set to solve for community instead of the man in the middle. And I thought that was going to be the biggest thing to happen in human history.
Before you got into crypto, so you worked in finance, and what was your experience up until then? Because from my perspective, at least, I feel like the investing world and the financial world was a very different beast before and after the explosion of crypto and like online businesses or a new wave of online businesses that have been happening since 2013. What was your experience like before 2017?
Sure. So I spent the first third of my career as a Wall Street analyst, following cable and satellite stocks. I left that to my first startup. We acquired the rights to the top level domain.tv from the nation of Tuvalu. So that was a nice run. And the second company I ran was called Bolt. We were the largest social network in the world before MySpace. We peaked at 23 million kids in 2006. And that's really when I first went down the rabbit hole, the community rabbit hole. And after Bolt, because I knew about community, I continued to invest in community as an angel investor. And then as a VC, and I was actually a VC focused on tech companies founded by Israelis when I saw the crypto light.
Thanks for sharing that. You mentioned that community is a big passion of yours, and you've clearly changed the world in a major way, at least in this ecosystem. You've started all of these meetups. I've been to a few of them, and it's crazy to me that you managed to spread this over, I think you said 60 active chapters all over the world. What attracts you to this idea that community is something worth investing in?
So, I go around and give a talk called 10 Thoughts on Community because I've been thinking about community for 20 years and I've learned a few things. And I start with defining community because it's a word we all use, and if I ask a group of five people, quite often I'll get very disparate responses. And about half the time I have to say in 30 seconds because people are very passionate about community and they can go on and on. But to me, if you distill down, most of the definitions I get of community, and if you distill it down really to its bare essence. To me, what a community is it's an ecosystem where when it works, everyone gets more out of it than they give. And who doesn't want to be a part of that?
That's part of the game theory narrative, that the sum is greater than the equal than all of the parts. And I agree. So you decided that this is something that you wanted to pursue. You obviously did it with it was Bolt, right? That was the social media platform. So you ran through that and then you got into crypto and you said that you started Crypto Mondays in 2018, if I'm not mistaken.
January 8th, 2018, which was literally the peak market cap day for 2 years. So we were actually celebrating the start of crypto winter.
Understood. And how did that journey go for you? What started it, and what was the first year like?
Sure. So I had been a long time Meetup shareholder. So I started my first Meetup a long time ago. By the time I got into crypto, I had started multiple Meetups. And a few months after I got into crypto, I got an email from a bar restaurant saying, "Hey, you do Meetups. We're a bar restaurant. If you want to have a Meetup at our bar restaurant on a Monday, we'd be happy to host you for free." And I thought about it for 2 seconds and responded, "Hey, thanks for your kind offer. But what I'd really like is 10% of the bar and every Monday till the end of time." And they said, "Great. When can you start?" And we had 300 people at the first one. And I had, yeah, as I said, started multiple meetups. I had never had 300 people at a meetup. We had 350 people and 3 TV crews at the second one when we decided to blow it out around the world, decentralized. So anybody could run a Crypto Mondays in their city. And we had no rules to start. Today we have one rule. And the one rule is you cannot email me and ask me permission for something.
Why is it? Why, well, I think, I mean, I can guess probably why that's the rule. From my experience with meetups, the most difficult part is actually finding the space and doing that consistently, especially when it starts to grow. I feel like after 50 people, it gets pretty difficult managing it all. When you started this decentralization process, what were the first few where were the first few Mondays happening?
Sure. So the only other one outside of New York that I had a hand in starting was Los Angeles because I wanted to. So, I called up a few friends of mine in LA and I said, "Hey, told them what was going on in New York." And they were pretty excited about starting it up in LA. I think, the first one in LA, I think started January 29th. So I think 3 weeks later. Um, and then people who went to Crypto Mondays in New York or LA started asking, "Hey, can we open one up in our city?" Um, the fifth one that opened up was Crypto Mondays Paris. And that one grew and grew until it became Paris Blockchain Week.
You did mention that. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I can see how it's like a spreader event. And what were some of the things that you found very challenging around this, or was it pretty easy? Did it just snowball into what it is now?
Well, I think decentralization, is really a key to the success that people really feel like they own it and it's theirs. We raise sponsorship money kind of at the parent level, and we split half of that with the individual chapters. And if the individual chapters, are able to get sponsorship money, they get to keep 100% of it. So really, the parent company is just here to provide support, and we don't charge anything for that. So, from a community perspective, we're comfortable that we're giving a lot to the the people who are running them, the co-organizers. Um, and the great thing is that the business model is the more you do for the community, the more the community takes it, multiplies it, and gives it back. And 100% of the people who have run successful Crypto Mondays have been overwhelmed by what the community has given them back.
It is pretty amazing. Everyone that I've been to, so I've been in two cities, so Denver and Philadelphia, and both of them had a lot of people, and it seemed like the quality of people that this attracts is very high. Everybody there is successful. Everybody there is a mentor and wants to help the people around them. I've definitely noticed that. I've made great connections during these events, and it's pretty inspirational. Seeing that you have your hands in a lot of different things, including Crypto Mondays and investing and all of these different things, how do you manage your time?
Sure. Not as well as I should. I kind of feel like, for me, there's kind of not a line between kind of my personal and my social. I really do crypto 24/7. The last conference I went to that wasn't crypto was called Democracy Now. And I remember going to the conference in 2021 going, okay, yeah, this is the last conference I'm going to that's not 24/7 crypto. And it's a passion. And, the nice thing is if you're passionate about what you do, it really doesn't feel like work.
I definitely feel that myself. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to manage that plus family, and it gets hectic, but I think everybody around me understands that I really enjoy what I'm doing, and that helps a lot. Um, with your career, so now you're 24/7 in crypto. 2022, it was that you started Crypto Oracle. What is the mission, the goal, and the vision for you there?
Sure. So the mission when we started, I was meeting tons of people who wanted to work in Web3 and tons of projects that wanted to hire them. The disconnect was the projects wanted to pay in illiquid tokens and equity, and most people have rent to pay and get hungry. So the idea of the collective was that we could create some, simple but compelling and sustainable token economics, such that if we got paid $100 in illiquid tokens and equity, we put that into our treasury and we mint $80 of liquid collective tokens. Nobody gets the other 20%. All the value just accrues to existing token holders. But that way, if people want, people can sell their tokens and pay their rent. And the model is working. We're scaling the number of clients, and our treasury is growing because, again, every mint we do is accretive to existing token holders. And now, we're starting other businesses. We're actually now the DAO for Crypto Mondays as well, and starting new businesses like I mentioned, the AI Web3 Accelerator.
During the last 2 years, you have grown this, and now you also own Crypto Mondays, and you're operating that. What are some of the projects that have been produced through Crypto Oracle that you're proud of?
Sure. So, I think, right now, the client that I'm spending the most time on is called Swarm. And so you might have heard of it. It was an early decentralized storage project started by Gavin Wood, one of the Ethereum co-founders. And, they've been building and building for years and have a great tech stack. And now they need to get out and really build their community and tell their story. So, it's a great client for the collective because, building community is obviously at the core of what we do.
Given that you have a lot of experience with the traditional financial world and you've probably interfaced with a lot of different businesses, how different is this process of trying to sell a narrative of a crypto startup or a crypto business?
I think it's very similar. I've been a VC. I raised my first fund in 2012, and I believe every single VC wants the same thing. Or same things, two things. One is they want to hear a big story, right? VCs need to invest in unicorns. So, the most often thing I do when I see a deck is I go to the out year revenue forecast and I add a zero because VCs want a really big idea. And the second thing they want is they want that idea to be simple. So they want to understand everything. So never use a word that everybody isn't going to understand. And I always say keep your deck to 10 pages because there are a lot more things that VCs hate than VCs like. And the longer your presentation, the higher likelihood that you're going to talk about something they hate rather than something they like.
That's great advice. I find it, people I've worked with are very technical in this space. Even the business-minded people tend to be like really into these buzzwords around decentralization and um, nodes. It gets hard to take that and turn it into something that's easily understandable by somebody that's not from this world. So I think you guys are doing a really good job making that happen. And I think a lot of businesses in the space need that support from what I've seen. I listened to your TED talk around accelerators and corporations, and the TLDR that at least I got from it is that corporations, they need to invest in creating startups in order to stay relevant in the modern space. And do you feel like that's a successful strategy? Is it still something that works?
Sure. I mean, it's a struggle for, for every corporation as they get larger and larger to continue to innovate. And yeah, I mean, my TED Talk, I think I did, it was 8 years ago, 2016, 2015. Um, and, I had been a part of multiple, accelerators and corporate accelerators. And, I think the biggest finding, that I found from the corporate accelerators was that they're well served getting help in running the accelerator instead of running it themselves. Um, and things as simple as like where it's located is really important. I found that sometimes corporate accelerators are located within the corporate headquarters, and that's I think most of the time going to result in failure because your startups will be subsumed by the more important things going on at headquarters, and at the same time, if it's across country, then it's never going to get integrated into what's going on. So I actually think the best corporate accelerators are ones that are in the same city, but a number of miles away from the headquarters.
That's a very interesting point you made. I noticed also that with Crypto Oracle, you said that you guys are uh, obviously reading the pitch decks and then trying to sell this narrative. Do you have any sort of accelerator built into your system, or is it mostly you're picking up already kind of successful businesses?
Well, we generally don't get involved until they've had venture funding. For us to accept their token and put it into our treasury and mint our tokens, there has to be some value placed on the token or equity by some reputable third party.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's generally we don't get involved at the idea stage, but we've gotten involved early in some super interesting projects. I think one's called Club de Vin, and it's a kind of tokenized wine club, but they're also tokenizing the largest wine collection in the world. This crazy story of this guy who built this collection south of Paris that nobody knew about for years.
I've seen a lot of interesting projects that take real world assets. Some of them are like orchids, apples, melons, just random things that they're growing or involved in, tokenizing it and then putting it up for the market. If somebody buys that token, they can then exchange it for the actual thing, like let's say the apple tree. Is this a trend that you're still seeing often? Because you mentioned the Club Divin, was it Club Divin?
Yes.
Is
So yeah, I mean the tokenization of real world assets is going to be massive. Again, it's still early in that trend. I think what you'll see is blockchain used for supply chain management. Right, blockchain is awesome for supply chain. So like one of the projects that I was involved in was called Kenta, Qenta, and they have the first and only ESG approved gold. So they're able to use the blockchain to track each of the steps involved in mining and producing gold, and to show that each one of those steps is in fact ESG approved. And so in totality, the coin is ESG approved by definition.
I really hope to see that. I feel like Uniswap allowing people to trade these different assets would be a very interesting world to live in. Just rent tokens and food tokens. It would be super cool to see. Do you feel like we're still a long way off from achieving something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem, in my view, is that today most of the systems that they're trying to use tokenization for actually works really well, like tokenizing real estate. Well, the real estate market actually works pretty well. There's a lot of liquidity in the real estate market. So, tokenizing real estate today, in my view, is just creating complications because the technology is still very difficult for most people to use. Most people don't even have a custodian, right? So how are you going to buy tokenized real estate? What are you going to do with the token? Nobody wants to hold their own token. So there are a lot of things I think that need to happen before tokenization of real world assets really starts to scale. But it's coming.
In terms of cutting out the middleman, which is what you said about communities at the start, do you feel like the way to go is to try to find middlemen in these different processes, let's say the real estate market or the wine market, and try to cut out a middleman as sort of the product? Is that a successful way to go about these things? Or is it about finding markets that are not very liquid and try to provide liquidity for them via tokenization?
Sure. I think the very first television shows were people sitting at a desk with a microphone on it going, now we're on television, right? All they were doing was putting radio on television. They had this whole new medium that enabled this new creativity to happen and flourish. But at the start, all they did was put radio on television. And, I think, today all we're doing is putting radio on television for real world assets. The question is, how can we, with this new tool set, how can we rethink even what assets are? Right? I think one of the great innovations that crypto has enabled is automated market makers. Right? That's that was so mind blowing when I saw that for the first time. And now we're in the kind of very early stages of understanding, okay, how can we rethink assets such that we can create whole new paradigms about, how we build stuff and trade stuff.
There's an article that I read on Medium about how Ukraine is using crypto to save lives, and I feel like that's a relevant story and the opportunity that this technology offers. Would you be able to share that story with us and like what your findings were?
Sure. So, the government of Ukraine was the first government to get whitelisted to accept crypto into their treasury. And, I think within like the first week, they got like $50 million of donations. It was a big number that, really meaningfully impacted how quickly they were able to, not only take in the cash, but deploy the cash. And, and they could get it from anywhere in the world. So I think that will be looked back on when the history is written as a kind of watershed moment.
I live in Poland and I can see the direct impact of how that situation is affecting this world, and it's definitely something that's needed, a way to get people funds to do what they need to do, whether that be seeking medical help or leaving or buying food. And I feel like this is kind of one of the biggest selling points for this technology and what keeps me around in it, the access of anybody to this financial system that, while it can be like censored in a few ways, is still a lot better than what we used to have. Thank you for sharing that story. I appreciate it. In terms of the countries that you've been to, I read that you really enjoy Dubai, and that was very interesting to me. It's a country that is really big into business and very different from the United States, I would feel. What attracted you there, and what made you so bullish on it?
Sure. So, I was excited to go to Dubai. I had heard about all the capital there was there to access it, and all the new building and construction that was going on, and all of that met my expectations. And it's it has a government that I think is highly functional, and is really looking out for the people of the country. And and I think that that's very different from most governments in the world today. But what really blew me away about Dubai was the people. It was, I think, the 32nd or 33rd Crypto Mondays city that I visited, and I described it as the second most talented group of people I'd ever met at a Crypto Mondays outside of Crypto Mondays Palo Alto. And that was really surprising to me. And it turns out that the best and the brightest of Europe, of Russia, of India, Southeast Asia, are moving to Dubai because there's just more opportunity there than any place else in the world.
Like the United States has to change to offer that opportunity onto these very bright minds. I have definitely noticed in my community a lot of people that are very talented, very skilled at what they do, and they are leaving the United States. There's a lot of Americans here in Poland that I know. I am an American in Poland, and I find that, and I don't really know how to describe it, but I feel like there's just something that's not being provided to me by my country. What do you feel like can improve in the United States to attract these bright minds and to change that course?
Yeah, I think most notably, obviously, for crypto, we need a friendly regulatory environment. And today we have an even worse than a bad regulatory environment. We have an unclear regulatory environment. So nobody has any idea what they can do or can't do. And every crypto company lives in fear that tomorrow the SEC is going to come after them for whatever the SEC wants to come after them for. And so it is, in my view, rabidly un-American what's going on with with regulations in the U.S. I don't know what Gary Gensler is solving for, but it is not the American people.
Do you feel like the Dubai system of regulation is the right way to go? I currently live in Europe, and they have their own way of regulating specifically stable coins. They have a lot of regulations around that. And while it's kind of annoying because there's a lot of things that you have to report that you wouldn't if you were just dealing with straight fiat. At least I have an accountant that kind of understands what the environment is like and is able to give me direct advice and guidelines to follow, which has been very helpful in, doing my taxes every year and trying to stay compliant with everything. So there's Dubai. Are there any other systems that you feel have a good crypto regulation, or any other countries?
Um, I think today Hong Kong is seeing a lot of capital flows because they have an improving regulatory environment. I think Singapore um, has a relatively friendly environment. In my travels, I think one of the most compelling Crypto Mondays I went to was, I've been to Crypto Mondays Saigon twice, and Vietnam has the highest penetration of crypto of any country in the world. And what was super interesting about Saigon is, all the other Crypto Mondays that I went to, about 5 to 15% of the crowd was female. In Vietnam, it was 40%. And I think that that speaks incredibly well for the ecosystem.
That's very interesting. I would have never known that. You mentioned early on in this conversation that you were an investor in a lot of Israeli startups, and that And I also read in your blogs that that's a place that you feel is a big, strong community for you. What makes you feel that way? What do you think Israel has to offer that makes you happy with it?
Sure. So, by any measure, number of startups per capita, number of IPOs per startup, number of IPOs per capita, whatever metric you look at to gauge the success of the startup ecosystem in Israel, it blows away any other startup ecosystem in the world. Um, and there have been books, written about it. The most notable one was called Startup Nation, which provides a laundry list of reasons why Israel crushes it in innovation and startups. But I think the biggest reason is the army. Everybody goes into the army in Israel and they get amazing, amazing education in, in management, so, somebody can be 20 years old and, be leading a battalion of, 100 or 200 soldiers. And most 20-year-olds never get that kind of management training, leadership training. But they also, they're leaders in cryptography. Israel, for this, for its own safety, has needed to be at the forefront of, of cryptography and internet security. And so, there's so much innovation that goes on there. AMMs were actually invented in Israel. That was Bancor. Zero knowledge proof was invented in Israel. That was at the university, at Hebrew University in 1980. So, they've been inventing new things and pushing this world forward for years and years. And they'll continue to do so.
As somebody who has not been there and does not know much about the culture, it is definitely very impressive to see how much technical innovation they are involved with. I did research around RPCs for one of the companies I work with, and I saw that I think they were one of the top 5 countries in crypto startups in the world. And uh, do you know anything about their regulation there? Is it similar to Dubai in any way?
Sure. So unfortunately, I'd say it's more similar to the US than to Dubai. Unfortunately, the US is, leveraging a lot of their closest allies around the world to adopt the same uh, uncertain regulatory environment that the US has.
I'd love to see some collaboration between them and other countries that, can help kind of spread that knowledge and that experience that they've accumulated, because it is definitely something that's been very effective. And it would be nice to see more of that. You have your crypto oracle company, and you said you're focusing on crypto and AI. What made you decide to add AI into the mix? And yeah, let's start there. What made you add AI into the mix?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think anybody who's paying attention, I think, realizes that AI is going to be a ubiquitous technology similar to crypto, um, that will change, every single industry, just like, the internet changed every single industry. And what's super interesting is the intersection of AI and Web3 actually solves a lot of problems that both AI has and Web3 has, or has the potential to. I mean, most notably, world driven by AI, most analysts, see a world in, 5 years, 10 years, where there will be literally trillions of micro transactions a day. And that's not probably not going to be handled by MasterCard or Visa. That's going to be crypto. How do you get, we're still struggling with decentralized identity. My guess is that will be solved by the intersection of crypto and AI, and on and on.
What kind of use cases have you seen that leverage both technologies that are either popular now or promising for the future?
Let's just take a look at, GPU farms. where you can use your crypto to rent out GPUs. So you're able to pay for the GPUs and with crypto and do that in real time, and rent out GPUs and do it in a decentralized way. One of the weird things about crypto today is most decentralized projects are on AWS, which is obviously centralized. So leveraging decentralized compute, decentralized storage. I think those are going to bring tremendous value to lots of industries.
Do you have any concerns around how fast it's growing? That is probably one of the most common narratives right now, is that this can easily go out of control or it can take a lot of people out of jobs. Do you see that being the case?
You know, um, Luddites have been around since the 1850s saying that technology is going to ruin the world, and I have no doubt that there will be one day when they are correct. That technology will usher in the end of the world. But until then, the only way to bet is that it will not. Um, and progress. If a job can be better done by a computer than a human, I see that as progress, and lifting up humans to spend their time doing other things. And the problem isn't computers doing the jobs of humans. The problem is how we have, as a society, address that and solve for the dislocation. Right? I mean, we're generating massive amounts of wealth as a society, but we've decided that it should all go into the hands of five people, and everybody else should live on the edge. And that's why our society is crumbling.
One narrative that I really like is the idea of the co-pilot, and I think a lot of these code editors they integrate AI as a quote unquote co-pilot, which makes sense. Is that planes have been mostly automated for the last 30 to 40 years, and we still have pilots that sit and are there to make sure everything goes well, despite most likely we don't need them. And I think that kind of gives me a lot of hope around people's place in this industry. And like you said, I think it's leveraging optimism is really important. Having an optimistic outlook is much better than being pessimistic. I looked at your client list on Crypto Oracle and I see that you guys have AWS as your client. Would you be able to share a bit of details around how that connection relationship started?
Sure. So I originally met Jeff Hasselman, who was the head of AWS at that time. When I introduced him as the speaker, head of AWS Web3, I introduced him as a speaker at Paris Blockchain Week last year. And I then got introduced to Brad Feinstein, who runs AWS Web3 in the US. And Brad is actually somebody I've known for a number of years in crypto. I think know him from Consensus in like 2019. And one of the capabilities of the collective that we're known for is events. So, not only do we put on, CryptoMondays events in 60 cities around the world, but like you saw in East Denver, around major events, like we had 600 people at CryptoMondays in East Denver. And so AWS, has hired us to help them put on their own events. So like, their Web3 arm, AWS has a sick event called reInvent in Vegas every November. They get 60,000 people. And so, we helped AWS, as an example at that event with their their Web3 group with their side event.
It's interesting to see that I really had no idea that they had any hand in the crypto world, and I am really impressed to see that that's the case. They are keeping themselves up to date, and it's pretty hopeful. What do you feel like? Do you feel like this current cloud infrastructure setup that everybody relies on, AWS and GCP and the Microsoft version, do you think that they're going to keep up with the times, or is this technology necessarily going to have to replace them? I know there might be a conflict in terms of answering that.
Sure. Well, look at, you know, um, new technologies come out, but newspapers are still around. They're not as big as they used to be, but they're still around. So things generally don't go away. I don't think certainly. I mean, we're still in the very very early days of cloud and all the different services that can be layered on top of cloud. I think that over time you'll find that a lot of crypto projects are going to want to increasingly have their processes decentralized. So again, whether that's decentralized compute or storage or whatever. And so I think for those companies, outside of AWS, providing some decentralized compute, um, my guess is that they will lose some of that market, but I think to a lot of projects, that aspect of decentralization isn't as important. And so, my guess is AWS will continue to grow, for the foreseeable future, just like Google Cloud and Microsoft's Azure.
I'd like to ask you what makes a effective community. You've spent so much of your career working on this in some way or another, and you've managed to produce a lot of successful communities. Like, what are a few things that you think are the main points around creating a successful community?
Sure. Well, I think it starts with defining a community. And so I define community as an ecosystem where when it works, everyone gets more out of it than they give. And to me, the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, Web 2 is about how much money can I make off my customer, right? On conference calls, companies brag about their profit margins, right? How much money did I make off my customer? Web 3 is about how much utility can I give my community member? And so, I believe that communities can scale highly correlated to what I call value delta. So in other words, a community manufactures something for community members at the cost of X. Community members get it and value it at Y. And the bigger the difference between X and Y, the bigger the community can become. And that's why if you think about it, the biggest communities in the world are actually the things with the biggest value deltas. And we have a collective name for those things. You know what we call those things?
I don't.
We call those things religions. And that's why they've scaled to billions of people and lasted thousands of years, because they're provide the world's greatest value delta. They produce, a Bible at 25 cents a book. And how much do people value salvation at?
You you took me on a huge detour here in thought, and thank you for that. But a lot of people have this notion that religions are outdated and that they are more harm for the world than not, and I tend to disagree. I think that community they offer community, and every year I feel like we kind of disconnect more as a society. People live in single family houses. People have to move away from their home around 18. We're getting atomized, and we need to connect to something bigger. And religion offers that, as they're the vehicle for allowing you to connect with others. So it's do you believe that in terms of like the value that it still generates? Do you think it's more good than bad?
Sure. So to me, I'm not interested in discussion of values and what you value and what I value. I don't think that's important to the discussion of what a community is, and the fact that millions, hundreds of millions, or billions of people think that they're getting value. That's the important thing, right? Lots of people say, hey, crypto's a scam, right? And all these people in all these crypto communities, they're just getting scammed, right? A lot of people believe that. And, that's fine. They can continue to believe it. And the people in the crypto community can continue to believe what they believe. And so, for me, I think, I say at the atomic level, a community is two people. And we've all been part of two people community where 1 + 1 = 100. And so I think if you live in a world of community, you actually live in a world of abundance.
When I met you in person, you mentioned a quote from a poem, If by Rudyard Kipling. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Rudyard Kipling.
Rudyard, Rudyard Kipling.
Interesting. Okay. And the quote that stuck with me is if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two imposters just the same. What does that mean to you? When did you come across this and why did it stick with you?
Sure. I mean, I came across it in college, and I think at the time, probably the line that stuck with me the most was if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, yet leave allowances for their doubting too. And the poem is a list of like 50 things, which if you can do all these things, then you're a man, my son. And what I love about, the line that you quoted, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat both imposters just the same is the fact that the difference between success and failure in startups is, it is often, razor thin. And, the story that I like to tell about, that highlights that most in my startup career was my first company was the largest streamer TV in the world in 2001, but streaming sucked because the pipes weren't fat enough. And fast forward 2005, I'm running the world's largest social network. Now the pipes are fat enough. So I talked to three tiny companies who are allowing kids to upload videos and stream them. And, it's easy technology to build. And we ended up buying the largest one. It was tiny for 250,000 and 5% of our company, Bolt. And a month after we bought that company, somebody uploaded a video called Lazy Sunday. It was an Andy Samberg Saturday Night Live video onto the number two largest video site. And that day, that website became the fastest growing website in the history of the world. 6 months later, Google bought it for $1.5 billion. That was YouTube. And fast forward 5 years, the Chad Hurley, the CEO of YouTube, emails me and he says, "Hey, we'd love to fly you out to San Francisco for a 5-year birthday party. I'd love for you to tell the story of when you called us. That was the first time we thought, hey, maybe we're a company. Somebody wants to buy us." So I flew out there. Chad thanked me for coming. I congratulated him on his success, but I couldn't help myself. And I had to say, hey, Chad, if they had uploaded Lazy Sunday onto Bolt, we would have been YouTube. And he laughed and he said, of course you would have been. He said, but why would my brother have uploaded it to your site? And I love that story because it teaches me two things. One is, a lot of it's lightning in a bottle, right? They had no idea that uploading that video was going to have that impact. But it turns out there's a lot you can do to optimize lightning in a bottle happening to you. And, could I have uploaded it, to Bolt, and would we have been YouTube? Probably. But I didn't, and that's what I mean by, kind of the difference between success and failure, is often much less than we think it is.
So, first off, Lou, thank you for coming on here and sharing your perspective. You've definitely innovated a lot in the space. You have contributed to creating communities around the world, and you've connected a lot of people. I find you to be one of the inspiring people that I've spoke to. I really do mean that. I think you've managed to do a lot of things in a very short amount of time. What I wanted to ask you as the last question is what would you advise people who are now coming up into this like new age of technology, the people in their 20s that are trying to start something good?
Sure. Well, first, Sarah, thank you for all you do for the community. This is obviously a labor of love of yours, and I'm sure you're bringing your community lots of value by doing it. Um, to me, the best advice I think I can give is, one, there are an infinite number of ways to skin the cat. So, you be you, and you have to decide, where your edge is. And the other thing, I tend to um, default to doing rather than talking. Um, I think you learn more, from your, the day one of your project being live and seeing how people interact with it than you do talking with people about it for 5 years. So, I'm always, when I get involved, early on in something, I say, well, how quickly can we get something live so we can actually start to learn? because yeah, until you're learning and iterating and improving, you're not going to get to product market fit, and that's what everybody's struggling for.
I've definitely noticed this is an issue in my family and people that I meet in my personal meetups, and the difference between, thinking and wanting to do something and contemplating it for a long time and then actually just going and doing it is huge, and a lot of people never get to that point. Perfecting something in your head is not going to actually make it happen. So the first step should always be like start small, fail again, do that 100 times, and then something will come out of it. So thank you so much. I've really enjoyed having you on here. I've learned a lot. I hope people here have as well. I'm going to leave links to the Crypto Mondays communities in case anybody here is listening and wants to attend one. And I'm also going to leave a link to the Crypto Oracle site. Uh, is there anything that you want to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah, we got another 10 days to apply to our AI Web3 accelerator. You can just go to cryptooracle.io. You can see the application there.
Awesome. And I'll spread that around. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys in the next one.